Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. Last week, I brought you the story of Chief Justice John Roberts, who made some really good comments during a chat that he had with another judge. And in those comments, he reminded the president that the United States Supreme Court is a co-equal and independent and separate branch of the government, all things that really need to be said right now. Well, today I'm going to bring you the story of two additional Supreme Court justices who also made comments to remind President Trump that SCOTUS is an independent, separate, co-equal branch of the government. I'm talking about Justices Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Now, let's get into this because if it wasn't for these justices and the judges across the country who are holding Trump accountable, we would be moving not just toward authoritarianism, but a full dictatorship. So I am delighted and gleeful to bring you the remarks of Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the recording of what they said, but we have what they reportedly said by various news outlets. So let's go to another screen, and I'm going to share those comments with you. So first we start with Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was added to the court by Joe Biden. I was so delighted that she, the first African-American woman, was appointed to the court, and she is not disappointing at all. Fortunately, she brings the jurisprudence of Thurgood Marshall back to the court. Remember, he was replaced with Clarence Thomas, and then we didn't have a strong African-American voice on the court since then. But Ketanji Brown Jackson brings that back to the court. And so here are some of the things that she has said within the past few days. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson forcefully condemned attacks by President Donald Trump and his allies on judges who have blocked Trump administration policies, warning Thursday that the increasingly hostile rhetoric poses a dire threat to the country's political fabric. So we know Trump has really gone after the judges with impeachment threats, with threats now of suspending habeas corpus and just verbal attacks. They have been holding him accountable and overruling some of the things that he has been doing. So he and his team, his allies, his supporters, they've been going after the judges. So let me just say right here, thank God for the judges. I mean, as I said earlier, without these judges, we literally would be heading toward a full dictatorship. And various parts of the Constitution that Trump doesn't like would be suspended. And those parts of the Constitution protect not only persons or non-citizens who are in this country, but most especially us citizens. So with them receiving the backlash that they're receiving right now from Trump, that tells us that they're doing something really, really, really good. So she says, quote, "The attacks are not random. They seem designed to intimidate those of us who serve in this critical capacity." Jackson told a judges' conference in Puerto Rico. She went on to say, "The threats and harassment are attacks on our democracy, on our system of government, and they ultimately risk undermining our Constitution and the rule of law." I mean, that is really serious. The threats that Trump and MAGA, his allies in Congress, those threats are not, don't just think of them as just rhetoric. They have the potential of undermining the rule of law, undermining our Constitution, fundamentally changing our country. So what she says is so very, very important. Our democracy is at risk here. This article goes on to say, though she did not mention Trump by name, Jackson said she was addressing, quote, the elephant in the room, close quote, a clear reference to the belligerent language and calls for impeachment that Trump and some of his advisors have lobbied at federal judges who rule against his agenda. Jackson urged her judicial colleagues to show, quote, raw courage, close quote, to dispense justice without fear of the results. And that's what we got to do. We got to show raw courage right now. And that's amazing when you think about it, that we have to drum up raw courage to even say things about Trump, because we know that he can come at you. We know he's full of revenge. What does that tell us? That tells us that we have already moved into authoritarianism. That's what the experts say. If you are fearful of reprisal for speaking against Trump and his agenda, we're already in authoritarianism. What we're trying to do now is prevent us from slipping into a dictatorship. You see? So we got to show, as she said, raw courage without fear of the results. I urge you to keep going, keep doing what is right for our country, and I do believe that history will vindicate your service, the Biden appointee said. Jackson's unusually pointed comments received a standing ovation from the judges and lawyers in attendance. And that's good to hear, because many judges, many lawyers, many law firms have shown a lot of fear. Many of them have buckled, right? Many law firms have buckled because of their fear of reprisal and loss of clients and so on. So, her words caused them to give her a standing ovation. Her 18-minute fulmination is the strongest public statement by any member of the Supreme Court since the Trump administration began denouncing judges who have blocked Trump's policies on immigration, firing government workers, and halting federal grants and contracts. So here, this courageous, who appears to be a little short woman with courage and fire, she reminds these judges and lawyers that we got to stand up to this. And it's not unusual for it to be an African American and a woman, because we have been fighting this sort of tyrannical behavior for 400 years. We African Americans, we have faced off against this so many times, right? Our ancestors faced even worse consequences for thinking about standing up to this type of tyranny. So it doesn't surprise me that she is the one who is standing so strong and is encouraging everyone else to stand so strong. All right? So we stroll a little further here. She says, quote, it seems as though every time I read the news or turn on the television these days, I see the affronts, said Jackson, who is the High Court's newest member. Jackson, who served as a district court judge for 8 years before being promoted to an appeals court and then the Supreme Court, said the attacks are often most intense and difficult for individual district judges who serve as trial judges in the federal system. And we know how dangerous it can be being a federal judge. It wasn't so long ago that the son of a federal judge was murdered by an assailant. He showed up at her door and murdered her son. And I think he also shot her husband. So it is a dangerous proposition when you have somebody out there, especially the president, who's attacking you on a daily basis. That causes all the goofballs out there to want to do harm to these judges and to anyone who speaks out against what Trump is doing. She goes on to say, I do know that loneliness, it is very stressful to have to decide difficult cases in the spotlight and under pressure, she said. It can sometimes take raw courage to remain steadfast in doing what the law requires. Jackson pointed to similar attacks on judges who issued controversial decisions during the Civil Rights Movement and the Watergate scandal. She urged her colleagues to take inspiration from those examples. And she goes on to say other judges have faced challenges like the ones we face today and have prevailed, she say. Bravo, bravo, bravo for her. Let me give her a round of applause. Okay? So these folks on the bench are working hard to save our democracy. Now, Justice Jackson is not the only one. There's also Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Okay, let's go over back now and see some of the things that she said recently. All right, this article says, liberal Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor urged lawyers Thursday night to stand up at a time when the profession is under attack from the Trump administration. Speaking at a meeting hosted by the American Bar Association, the nation's biggest legal group, she said it was an act of solidarity to appear at the event in Washington. So she, too, is standing courageously at a time when members of Congress are running scared. Running scared. You remember the Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski? She's a GOP senator, and she expressed fear and said others of her colleagues in the GOP are afraid of Trump. So while they cower in fear, these justices, they're standing up. At least some of them. At least some of them. So let's go back to Justice Sotomayor. She goes on to say, in all the uncertainty that exists at this moment, this is our time to stand up and be heard, Sotomayor said. Right now, we can't lose the battles we are facing, she added. The Trump administration has targeted the ABA, the American Bar Association, itself as a part of a broader assault on lawyers. Sotomayor gave what could be viewed as a pep talk for the assembled lawyers of the group's tort, trial, and insurance practice section. She goes on to say, if you're not used to fighting, losing battles, don't become a lawyer, she said. Our job is to stand for people who can't do it for themselves. That is a literal Bible verse, that we speak for people who can't speak for themselves. And she goes on to say, for me, being here with you is an act of solidarity. She added, prompting enthusiastic applause from the audience of lawyers. Sotomayor has spoken out several times in recent months. In March, she talked about the need of the courts to be fearlessly independent. So they are fighting back. Sotomayor, as well as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. We got the comments also from the Chief Justice. But as I expressed in my video about him, I don't know, because he has been a part of the majority that really has created this that we're dealing with now in several court cases, including the absolute immunity case. Anyway, this goes on to say, Chief Justice John Roberts also stressed the importance of independent courts in a public appearance in Buffalo, New York on Wednesday. In total, 3 of the 9 justices have defended the judiciary since the beginning of President Donald Trump's second term, the most outspoken being Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was more explicit in saying last week that the criticism and intimidation of individual judges were designed to intimidate the judiciary. The Trump administration has assailed the American Bar Association in part for its support of diversity efforts with the Justice Department, among other things, barring lawyers from practicing in its events. So this is crazy. This is absolute crazy what we are witnessing in our country. And if we don't stand up, and that is all of us, not just judges and lawyers, all of us, remember, never forget, we the people. The framers of the United States Constitution, they designed our government to protect us for what Trump is doing. Unfortunately, the legislative branch is abdicating their responsibility right now. Congress is controlled basically by MAGA because MAGA has taken over the GOP, and they're doing nothing. They are doing nothing to stop Trump. So it's got to be we the people. The judges, several of the justices, they're doing their part. But we got to do our part to stop this unless you're comfortable living in a dictatorship. I'm not. So let's fight back. Now, the thing that we need to do more than anything else coming up, it's a little bit of time off, but it gives us enough time to organize and mobilize, and that is to work very, very hard to flip Congress so that we can get some folks in there who will put a stop to this. Flip Congress. Flip Congress. Flip Congress. That's what we got to be focused on. That's what we got to be focused on. Okay, now, before we get out of here, let me just kind of show you where we are in terms of SCOTUS and who might help us when it's necessary, because we got some big court cases coming up. We got one coming up this week, actually, having to do with birthright citizenship. Now, that case really doesn't decide whether or not birthright citizenship is unconstitutional all of a sudden. I mean, it's been a part of the U.S. Constitution now for 170 or so years, but Trump's trying to change that. What this is going to deal with is whether or not judges can issue nationwide injunctions. That's literally coming up. I think it's Thursday. So anyway, the judges who will stand for America, we know for sure are same justices, Justice Brown, Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan. We know that for sure. There's a potential yes for Chief Justice Roberts. I wouldn't count on it. I really, really wouldn't count on it because Justice Roberts ideologically agrees with a whole lot of the stuff that Trump is doing. I also got question marks above the head of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She too is a maybe because she also agrees with a lot of what Trump and the GOP and MAGA are doing ideologically. But she has, at some time, in some cases, she has sided with the other, those three progressives there on the court. When it comes down to checking Trump's authoritarian tendencies, protecting our constitutional rights, in other words, she may. And Chief Justice John Roberts may, which could give us the 5 majority votes on SCOTUS that is needed. Or they could completely, I'm telling you, because ideologically, they agree with a lot of what Trump is doing, and they gave those cases over the past few years that first kept him on the ballot and secondly gave him immunity. Now, the other 4 that you see Trump signs over their heads, they're straight, total, absolute Trump voters, especially Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, especially them. And then, to a lesser degree, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. So they just need one of those folks there with the question marks over their heads, and then they prevail. So hopefully, protecting our democracy and preventing more authoritarianism and a dictatorship, potentially, hopefully, that's what's on their brain when these cases come before them. Because our Constitution was written by people who were really concerned of one person having absolute power. You follow me? So That's the makeup of the court. They're the ones who are ultimately going to decide whether they're going to enable Trump or whether they're going to go with the American people, with the Constitution. We will see. All right, I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video, and remember, stay woke.